I'm Jessica McCoy here with my friend. I'm really glad you're here, Andra Jones with the Boys and Girls Club of the Permian Basin. I'm really excited to have her here, mostly because she's a fellow former student athlete. I have a lot of really great things to talk about with Andra today, and I'm really excited that you guys are here. A couple things about her. She was born and raised in Snyder, Texas, so, not Midland, but West Texas. She got a full ride scholarship to North Texas for playing golf. Pretty cool. You don't see very many female golfers, which is incredible. It's awesome that she works for the Boys and Girls Club now, too, as well. She has a master's from Texas A&M University. Hold your applause, Aggies. And she has 16 years worth of educational experience working within different types of school districts, 8 years in the classroom. She has been an executive director for the Boys and Girls Club now for 2 years. She has a 5-year-old daughter and a little baby on the way due in December. Major props to you for being here, by the way. Her husband is not from here. He is from Central Texas. He obviously moved here for oil and gas, much like all of us. And now he works in the alternative energy sector, which is a nickel, like nickel and refining, which is pretty exciting. Needless to say, our conversation is going to be filled with lots of different anecdotes about what it was like to be a student athlete, to her leadership skills that she has to do every single day, working in a different type of environment outside of the classroom, now as an executive director. Join me as I welcome Andra Jones.
Hello.
Hey, Andra.
Yeah.
So excited to see you. I will tell you, for everybody who's watching and listening, we are friends, so it's kind of cheating, I feel like. But anyway, so did I miss anything?
No.
What was it like being a student athlete at North Texas?
It was a goal that came to fruition. North Texas was a great spot, but I will say going to a liberal arts school coming out of West Texas was much of a culture shock.
I bet.
But that was great. I was also a part of a sorority there that then allowed me to make ties here in Midland through an alumni group when I moved out here. So that was a blessing, but there was great golf courses, and I got to travel a lot doing something I loved. Took me into coaching after college, did that for a little bit before I came to Midland to be a teacher in the classroom and not coach.
I feel like when you do sports, if you don't know, I actually swam at SMU, so we're kind of just down the street from each other. But I do feel like being a student athlete does translate not only into leadership,
absolutely,
but also I feel like once you've done a sport, you're always going to do a sport or be involved in some sort of activity revolving around sports. So talk to me a little bit about what the Boys and Girls Club does, because in my head, my son in particular, I have 2 children, you know that, and one of them did basketball at the Boys and Girls Club. So in my head, I'm thinking, does the Boys and Girls Club only do sports? Tell me a little bit about it.
So I think that's one thing we've worked really hard in the last 2 years to change is that we're not just sports, but sports is something that we provide for kids because whenever you really drill it down, it's going to teach grit and dedication and character. It also provides an adult mentor, usually outside of that child's family circle. So there's a lot of things as far as when you're developing the health skills, that's fantastic, but let's also focus on the character skills. So yes, we do have sports. We have volleyball, basketball, and flag football.
Wow.
But the piece that is near and dear to my heart is our club programming that happens after school and in the summer. So we are an outside of school programming for kids that are age 6 to 18. And we do that at a very, very low rate for families to help with just offering childcare. And with that, we are one of the few organizations for youth services that serves teens in that time, as well as some teen programming, on the weekends and different activities like that, because we really feel that it's important for kids to have mentors and safe places to continue to be kids, but also adding in value and programming like art and STEM programming and literacy and other. We have so many different partnerships that pour into our kids.
I didn't realize
that it opens some doors that our kids would never have access to otherwise.
That's fantastic. So you said a lot there.
Yeah.
So let's
break it down.
I love, but I just I'm mentally making myself aware because there's so much of that I know personally, and I'm sure you can relate, that you kind of pick that up if you are in sports, right? So sports is all you can learn grit, like you said, leadership skills, but also I feel like it creates an innate curiosity about the world. right? You said you enjoyed part of your college experience was traveling, right?
Yeah.
So with your kids and your students, what's the right word? Should I say members?
We say members, it's our youth. I mean, they are students because they're coming from schools,
right?
But then we're not providing, like, we don't follow TEA or whatever. So
I like to
there
use
are
the
club
right
members. Yeah.
I like to use the right semantics, so that's great. So one of the things you said was STEM education.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I feel like everyone in oil and gas, I can imagine that just lights up everyone's brain. Oh my gosh, I had no idea. We have sports and STEAM and art. Like that's just so unique. Because oftentimes, I mean, I know this myself being a mother, I feel like I have to have like a taxi service at this point for children.
Right.
Because we're beep-bopping around from, the different organizations. Like my son goes to Snapology for STEAM education and like just for fun in the summers. It sounds like the Boys and Girls Club has everything that a parent would want, not only to help solve a big problem, and we'll get into that about childcare, but also it's like you're getting the most bang for your buck, it seems like. When your children are being taken care of outside of your home, in the sense that they're being fostered within their confidence and within their deep parts of their soul, right? They're learning new things. They're interacting with other people. The mentorship aspect of it is so important.
Right.
I mean, that's all you could ever want as a parent, right? But I feel like that's oftentimes a luxury, right?
Absolutely.
So what is that like? I mean, I just think that's such a blessing to be able to have everything under one house. What do some of your members' parents say?
So I think one thing we have to recognize, this happens at schools and in nonprofits. Like, nobody is successful in isolation. So whenever I talk about STEM and STEAM with the art piece, we have partnerships that make that happen. I have an amazing art coordinator that travels to all of my clubs, but also we have local artists that come in and they do activities with our kids.
Wow.
At Midland Shared Spaces, you can go see a gallery wall with our kids' art. So our kids wouldn't necessarily have that outside of the club because a lot of the art classes aren't necessarily required or consistent in elementary schools. So elementary schools, you have music or art. It's one of the two. So we just provide that extra layer where we're trying to build is have music education in our clubs. So our kids just get to start having access to where they're kind of planning into junior high of what is my track, what is my interest, and where can we make sure that they're getting involved throughout the whole day. But I'm going to shout out some people. Chevron come and does STEM days with us.
Wow.
We go to Petroleum Museum and
they're great.
Oh my gosh, their new facility is amazing. We had teens that did drone camp this summer.
Drone camp?
Yes, and then they'll have Make It days where our kids can just go and our club staff takes them and they can use the 3D printers. They can make T-shirts. So all of those components are done through partnerships. Code Ninjas comes to one of our clubs.
They are fantastic.
Yes. So we have built that partnership. It's grant funded, and they come every Friday for our kids to take coding classes. My kids, for many reasons, like, cost for a lot of these things, but also their parents are working. So how are they going to get to maybe the Code Ninjas location by Murray's? Well, they don't have to go anywhere. Code Ninjas comes to us. So those are some pieces on the STEM side that are happening. And we're working with some other partnerships possibly where it's just adults from companies or in the community coming in and they're building kits with kids that we provide. So it's just more sitting across the table with a kid, being able to talk, get them to think, because the more adults that have influence on our kids, it just is giving our kids access to different ways of thinking and communicating and learning how to have those conversations that are soft skills that are essential in life.
100%. So two things that I want to highlight with that is being an educator yourself. Okay, I was raised by a teacher myself who ended up going into administration for a while. So similar path to you. But I think what is really interesting is the insight that she's given me, and I'm sure you can probably mirror that, is there's so much when we look at modern education, right? Teachers are spread thin.
Yeah.
I mean, I have so much empathy for our teachers and our administration that we have here. And I feel like it's such a controversial topic for one to bring up because there's so many resources that we have. There's so many institutions that kind of set up education for failure.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
And from what I'm hearing is that the Boys and Girls Club provides a need for the community and almost reinforces what children are learning in schools, but to a higher level. Would you say that that's the case?
Yeah, we're like an add-on support. So if you think about, you have a kid needs, some family or whatever that core group of caregivers are, then they have the school side. Well, then who's filling the gaps outside of those places? So we are that outside place we feed kids a hot meal after school every day. We have Power Hour, which is tutorials or homework help or reading buddies, or they work on the computer through a literacy program that's a new partnership as well. So it's just one of the things whenever you think about families is what we hear from parents is when they pick up their kids, so we're open after school from 3 to 7 o'clock.
Oh, that's so nice.
Maybe it's a person who gets off at 5:30, but they can go run a few errands, like go to the grocery store without your kids. That's a luxury.
Yeah.
And do some of those things. Or we have a lot of parents who have those hourly jobs. So now you have a parent that has some more flexibility to work a little bit later, which I hope an employer would see as a value.
100%.
And we're able to take care of their kids until 7 o'clock. But whenever you pick up your kid from us, they're fed, their homework is done.
That's awesome.
They've done something inside the club that, was engaging. So what we hear from parents, specifically single parents, is when they get to go home, they're getting to be a family and they're not trying to do all of these other things.
Gosh, yeah.
That require just being an adult and being a parent. So I think that's one of the values that we have. And when we do that, we do it for $1 a day. A kid comes to our club for $1 a day, and that way the childcare piece not only is provided so that parent can work and do what they need to do, but it's also not a financial stretch because we know what it costs to live out here, to raise a family, to have groceries, and what I call Permian prices, because it might be a little different somewhere else, but it still costs money to exist.
I mean, we're at a culture war right now for mothers.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at the demographics of most single parents, it's mothers.
Right.
So it seems like another way that society is pushing mothers down into the dirt. And I just want to know, how are you approaching these conversations to educate parents about the importance of additional support services for the children?
Right. So, I think there's a lot of things you can go there. So one thing I'm going to focus, I will say kind of, off topic is society does push, but I think the only reason that we consume that is through the choice of social media.
100%.
And you got to have the self-awareness of where to shut that off. But we do hear from parents that, they've moved here and they don't have a family support unit here. So they've got to find that through various means. And then a third of our families are single parent households. Another piece of data I'm trying to collect in 2025 is what type of households? Because we do hear about the stories of, it's now a grandmother or an aunt
multi-generational homes.
Yeah, who are taking on kids to make sure that they have a good setting. So those are some things that we look at, but by and large, we see that there are 2 working caregivers in the household.
Yeah.
But they're working. And in a lot of cases, and kind of going back to my education side when I worked for Midland ISD, is what I found was that we had 2 working parents who were, maybe they were first generation college, but really a lot of them were the first people in their family tree to own a home, to really be working their way out of maybe not necessarily poverty, but really that paycheck to paycheck piece that, truly building a different American dream for their family.
100%.
And that's hard. And it costs a lot of money, or it costs a lot of time to make that money. And then the parents need somewhere for kids to go because we don't have the world is not a place where even in Midland, if you think about it, there's not a lot of opportunity, even with our neighborhood schools, for kids to feel safe to walk home. Or we play out in the front yard. Okay, so we're living in a different world than what you and I were raised in, and then obviously what our parents were raised in. So there's got to be some things in place to provide that safety because of what we see in those terrible things in the world. Do I think that those things always exist? I do.
Yeah.
But I think we have more access to that. So for us with parents, I think about how do we serve parents, or do we have a ton of parent meetings? No, we don't.
That's so nice, though.
Well, it is.
What's the last thing you want to do is look at your email and see all of these things, or have to attend something else. Mental fatigue within parents is a real thing.
Well, what's interesting, you hear about it in the school setting is the parent involvement. It is super important.
Yes.
Same thing with Boys and Girls Club. But the way I look at it is we are involved with the parents because we are offering a place for them to send their child to where that mental load for that 4 hours, or the summer from 8 to 5:30 on the weekdays, that is something they don't have to worry about as much. And it wasn't until it was really recently, I was at a United Way panel. We brought in parents to just kind of learn. And it really was a paradigm shift for me, which is crazy because I'm 18 years into working with kids, right? And she said, it's not that I don't want to come to school events or parent meetings. She's like, but I have 4 children that are 9 months to 9th grade.
Oh, man.
I live out in the country. I can't be everywhere. But then if I'm not everywhere, the perception is that I don't care. So I just need options.
Yes.
And so then, and I said, here I am, I'm like, yes, amen. Because there's ways to be involved and be engaged without always being present or having 100% attendance.
Yes.
But then, I feel like as a nonprofit agency, there's a pressure whenever you think about your donors and your funders and your grants about, well, okay, how do you serve? It's a 2-generational approach, which is important. How do you capture that? But also having the cognizance of what is a good use of family time. So things that we do to involve families, obviously our sports, you're going to see the gym packed with people. So those parent supports are there. But we also have holiday family meals. So those are coming up.
That's so cool.
And it's just like an open door.
Because
you're a part of our
such a
club.
stress. I mean, even if you have the best situation and it's like a Norman Rockwell painting, and even if you had that situation where everything's fine and mom buys 2 turkeys and whatever, family holidays are so stressful.
Well, but think about this
too. It seems like it's great that it takes the pressure off.
So, and the West Texas Food Bank is also really good about, they'll give up some food boxes that we usually can give out at our family feast. But when you think about it, we're open till 7 o'clock, right?
Right.
So a lot of the times our families aren't sitting down at a dinner table.
No.
And okay, cool. But our kids sit together and they have family style meals at our clubs. But then this one night for Thanksgiving and Christmas or
That's
Easter, we are having a family meal for maybe a family who doesn't have the opportunity to do that. And, we're feeding 300 to 400 people at the Midland site. We do the same thing in Odessa.
That's awesome.
And it's because we have community partners. Again, we don't do it in isolation, who come and serve and, provide this meal for these families. So that is one way we involve the parents. We have open houses. We do all those things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't get hung up, and my staff doesn't seem to get hung up on, well, I only had 20 parents. I'm like, but
metrics?
you had 20 parents,
Yeah.
And the deal is that we just have to know that our numbers keep growing. So obviously what we're doing is a service, and through that, we are serving the parent by serving the child.
I think that's wonderful, because not only you're also helping with the mental load of being what it is to be a parent, right? But then going back to, you were talking about the 2-parent households. Okay. My husband and I both work. I'm very lucky that my mom is retired and she can help us out, and my mother-in-law can help me out. If I did not have them, I don't know what I would do.
Right. I'm in the same boat. I'm blessed that my family moved here.
So it seems rich almost and indulgent for us to sit here and say, well, this is why this is so important, even when we have the support at home, right? But I think it's really important for an increase of empathy across the board for parents. Because I personally see this in my day job, right? As a swim coach, I am consistently working with parents that tell me things about their families willingly, that they open up to me, sharing, hey, I know it seems like we're very lucky with a financial situation or a family situation. This stuff about being a parent is hard.
Right.
So I want to kind of pivot from where you're saying, you know, what you were talking about with parents and how you support parents. But from being a 2020 parent myself, I'm very concerned about what is going to happen to our kids.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at parents, and like, parents are, you know, just like you, they'll probably have conversations about like, this is how I'm feeling right now as a parent. You know, you feel like you're being spread so thin, both moms and dads.
Right.
Sometimes grandparents or aunts and uncles that are taking care of their nieces and nephews. Everyone is spread so thin, and it's impossible for that type of environment to not affect children.
Right.
So, not to be negative, but I'm really big on, I think we both are, about shooting straight. But like, what are you most concerned about as not only a former educator, but an executive director that works specifically with children and families? What are you most worried about for our future of our children?
So I think one thing that it's the power of the information we have access to. So there's power there. Power can be good, power can be bad. And so I worry about kids. There's so many levels to this. So number one, is the parent engaged and present, or just present and like on their phone? Because
Guilty.
I remember
I've been there.
when like I had a brick cell phone, like when they came out, but that has evolved over time.
We are more accessible now than
ever
before.
And we're taking in so much information, and we're not designed to do that. So that's a whole nother thing. So mentally, number one, my concern is our adults pouring into whatever their passions are, whatever they're called and designed to do. But then in that, are we being mindful of the generation that we're modeling for, right? And then for kids, it's that access to, is somebody at least guiding them, talking to them? You talk about like the mental load of a parent, but and you say, well, we talk about it, but I think one thing is are we talking about it? Are we, do people have a tribe that they can lean on? If they don't, are they able to find resources to connect them with people to be able to first speak about it? Because we all know, especially post-pandemic, the mental health crisis that we're in. And I think that number one, what's great is going on is kids and adults, like, it's more common to talk about, right? It's not a faux pas, like going to therapy or whatever. But then our next piece is access. So it's access regardless of what your background is, what your financial status is, what zip code you live in. Everybody needs access to supports that give them the next piece of their journey, right?
Right.
So for kids, the other part of that is like, I'm going to spur more to the education side.
Yeah, please.
Is I always talk about that. One of the things I think Boys and Girls Club does well is we provide experiences and opportunities for kids they wouldn't have. Maybe my kids would never go to the trampoline park. Okay, cool. That's an experience and an opportunity that could be a core memory. But in those pieces is that, are we also thinking forward for our kids' future? In you and I were probably, and most of the people we grew up with, you went to college.
Yeah.
There was no other option.
Oh, let's talk about that.
And if you were not going to college, like, there was the whispers about, whatever.
Yeah, 100%.
But now what I'm seeing is we all are starting to see, we're hearing it from oil and gas people, the trades.
Yes.
The trades are huge.
So important.
So the other piece is as we look at Midland and in the Permian Basin with the age of parents or residents, if you will, is we have to be a paradigm shifter. We have to be like, okay, we're got to be like watching these kids, whether they're yours or other ones that you love, and saying, okay, how do we pave a path for this kid that is not forcing them into a bucket that I think most of us were, and valuing where they could be. Schools are doing a much better job, though, because now, when you and I went to school, you just went and got a diploma.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit older than you. Now kids pick a track, right? And in that track, when they're in junior high and high school, they're starting to take classes to gear that way. They have opportunities to change that, if you will. I think if I would have had that, I wouldn't have changed my major 6 times. I
didn't know you changed it 6 times. I had no idea.
And honestly, the only reason I was able to do that is because I was on a full ride, so I didn't have to worry about the cost, right?
That. Yes.
So, here, true confession. But at the same time, we've got to have the schools are creating these pathways, right? but the schools only have them for so long. So then with Boys and Girls Club, we look at these pathways and we're like, okay, we know that STEM is a big deal. We also teach them how to change. Like one of our directors, there was a parent that had a flat tire. Guess what?
Wait,
He's
no,
like,
can I
hey,
actually
kids,
sign up for that?
Come over
Because
here.
I don't know how to do it.
And the kids learned how to change a tire.
That's awesome.
And with Boys and Girls, our partnership with Boys and Girls Club of America, as a member, we have access to programming. We have a lyric lab that kids can go get on a computer. And I couldn't help a kid write a song if my life depended on it.
That's really cool.
But there's a program that will. But what we're seeing from Boys and Girls Clubs as a whole is that we're looking at workforce readiness, soft skills, and really engaging teens to make sure that they don't kind of fall off and just like isolate. So that's what we're looking at with kids. So whenever I share those things, you say, what's my fear? I fear for kids who don't have that.
Oh, wow.
I fear for kids, like, who are the ones that we're not hitting? And, you know, the kids who aren't in something in school involved, what about those kids that are disconnected? Where are they? What are they doing? Where are they going? I started working at 14. My parents both had businesses, so I kind of could get around some things.
Yeah.
But now there's also laws in place that, you know, I have friends that own various businesses. They're like, okay, yeah, I can hire at 16. Oh, well, we can't hire until 18.
Yeah.
But I also am curious as what do we have parents that are trying to get their kids to work? There's kids who need to do it out of necessity, right?
Yes.
They're helping their families. That's one. Okay, can we help them get access to that?
Yeah.
Number two, though, are we as parents kind of being like, well, I don't want them to work until they have to. That's not the way I was raised.
Me either, girl.
You know, but also I don't want to criticize a parent.
I know. There's no wrong way to go
I just think that kids who are
but
doing nothing, those are the kids who we need to be worried about. And why are they doing nothing? Who is their village?
What do you think would happen if they didn't? Like if they didn't, okay, so let's talk about an example. What happens if there is a student in, you know, MISD, falls through the cracks?
Yeah.
And they don't have a village. Like their family is very much like a lot of other families here in Midland where mom and dad moved here for work. They are working their tails off because that's what we have to do here. And that's what every parent has to do in the United States right now. And there's not a lot of time within the family schedule to do sports. What about, like, and all they're doing is literally going to school and then maybe come home at night.
And TikToking.
You're
right.
I know, I'm guilty of that too.
Yeah.
But, like, I actually have a lot of family and, like, friends not here in Texas where that's their situation.
Right.
So selfishly, I'm wondering, just from your, like, putting your educator hat on, what does that look like? Like, what happens if you don't have that village? What are the negative implications of that?
Well, I think one you got to look at is the kid on grade level learning wise. At school, are they able to take care of business? Because we're talking about a whole different situation. If you've got a high school, junior high kid who is not reading on grade level, who is academically behind and struggling, because then the statistics start stacking up against that kid. And by nature as humans, we are like tribal creatures. We find a network, right? And if we as adults, regardless of parent or just the village, right, if we don't cultivate that, kids are going to find somewhere to be.
And it could be bad.
It could be on their phone playing a game with strangers that people don't even know about. That is one thing that I think parents and even us as tech savvy people, I have been amazed what I have learned about what kids have access to on Roblox, on Fortnite. I mean, we are putting our kids out on the internet and basically just
without frontal lobes developed.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, same thing, just scrolling through YouTube. So there's that piece that is I think, you know, we allow this phone to be a babysitter or the tablet or whatever. So you've got that component. And then you have the component of, okay, a kid that's on track. Well, I mean, there's going to be some people that they're going to be okay, but at the same time, we were not made to live in isolation.
No.
I remember when my mom told me that because I was just like, oh, there's nobody, you know, there's no man for me. She's like, Andra, you were not made in isolation. And then I happened to hear it at church not too long after that. I was like, well, I guess I'm going to have to, like, you know, get on an app and find a man. That's how I found my husband. But anyways, I digress. But on that is that, you know, they're going to find somewhere. But for our kids who don't have those structures, how much harder is that road? Right? I mean,
I think
because,
loneliness, mental health
right.
struggles.
I mean, and you see that we have, you see different statistics, but kids get in trouble. We have, yes. Is there drugs out here? Absolutely. Guess what? They're everywhere else. Is there school violence out here? Yes. Guess what? Everywhere else. You learn and hear those things in your bubble.
Right.
And I think that our districts are doing a great job of really cracking down on that. Mm-hmm. But it is a multi-layered approach, right? And it's not just on the school. It's not just on the parent, but it does start at the home. And maybe it's, you've got parents who you got to think too, you look back generationally, what supports did that parent have? And I mean, we even in the school system, I would tell my teachers, there might be parents who don't show up here because they had a bad school experience.
Yeah.
Coming to school for us as educators, like, oh, we love it. We probably had a great school experience. So coming to work is fun. Mm-hmm. Well, what about for those parents that have had a traumatic experience? What about for those kids that have had a traumatic experience? There's just so many pieces of that you can't ever assume that you know somebody's story.
Oh, I'm sure.
To layer that in. I think I went all over the place on that question.
No, you're tracking. Going off that track too, kind of same subject, but addressing what we had talked about previously. Let's talk a little bit about the trades. Okay, so for instance, my mom being a teacher. When you're a teacher, you kind of subscribe to the love of education.
Right.
I have learning disabilities. I have dyslexia and dyscalculia. School has always been incredibly hard for me.
Right.
I was openly told that I was stupid and that I would never graduate from high school, let alone college. I had my coach tell me that I would be better off not here, on this planet because of my learning disabilities. Come to find out, he has the same exact learning disabilities and was projecting what he was told growing up.
Right.
Okay, and this is a very highly regarded swim coach. So, there were times where, and if we're looking at my job right now, my day job is a swim coach. That is more of a hands-on job. I'm not sitting there looking at spreadsheets, Right. There's something to be said with learning how to do something with your hands and learning something practical. I was reading in Texas Monthly that there are hundreds of HVAC companies that are being bought up by private equity. And these mom and pop electricians or HVAC companies or plumber companies they're being bought out by private equity. And we can get into the conversation about what private equity is and all that some other day. That is not for today. But there's something to be said about building something that is so successful that has nothing to do with, you didn't have to go to college for it. You did have to go to electrician school. My mother-in-law's father was an electrician.
Right.
And he had a great career. There's something to be said about that. So what kind of resources are in the Permian for trade schools? And how are you getting your members prepared for that? Just opening up their mind that might be a good option for them.
Yeah, so I think you think about let's start from the beginning. Toddlers, if my 5-year-old is, whether she's building with blocks or painting, she loves to do that. Guess what? She's occupied.
Yes.
She's not needing me,
Nope.
which is pretty cool, right?
Yep.
Every once in a while. But then you go into a classroom. Mm-hmm. When are kids the most engaged? When their hands are busy.
Really?
Yeah. So you have, I was a science teacher, so, during lectures, when is the time I'm having to get on kids? Probably the stuff that's super boring that does build into the lab that we're going to do. But again, when are they most engaged? When their hands and eyes and feet are doing something.
Miss Frizzle always says from Magic School Bus, get messy, make mistakes. Right?
And then you're learning. So then we move into, so we see this with kids when they're the most engaged, but then we want to put them in a box and say, hey, you need to read this 500-page book and give me a 5-page paper, which there's a place for that in some situations.
Yes.
So then with the trades, I think what we're seeing, there's some great things happening with MISD bond and ECISD bond where there's CTE centers.
Wow.
So that is going to be your technology education. Great partnerships happening with Midland College and UTPB and OC, and where kids are getting their hands onto things. So
Wow.
my cousin is a senior. She is going to be able to be a certified phlebotomist
Whoa.
when she graduates. So like she can go draw our blood and go work at the hospital at 18. And
That's amazing.
so the cool thing about that out here in the Permian is, right, like you see people that they come out here and it's like, oh, it's a tour of duty and they're going to leave.
Yeah.
So what I'm seeing out here is we're starting to grow our own. We're growing our own teachers through programs at Midland College and
Wow.
at the other universities. You've got the medical side with Midland College and the hospital. So we're creating these pathways. The schools are getting kids on, that track that I talked about when they graduate. So then for us as Boys and Girls Club, what are we doing? Okay, well, we're taking university visits because we
Exposure.
we have great community colleges that can give you certificates
Wow.
and associate's degrees, as well as a great university that if y'all haven't been to UTPB lately, you need to go walk it because
Wow.
it is truly functioning as a university. You feel like that school spirit when you walk there.
Oh, cool.
And all of these things. So we're giving them that exposure. Hey, this is in your backyard. Plus all of the funding and that, whether it's scholarships or I hope it's more scholarships versus, we're getting into debt going to college or whatever. But all of that is accessible here if kids want to stay here. Now, granted, like I told you, I wanted to get as far away from West Texas as possible. But a lot of my kids that I serve statistically, they're going to be kids who stay here.
That's amazing.
So let's grow them here.
Right.
You've got Sewell Auto Tech over in Odessa that
What are they doing?
I haven't been there yet. I drive by it every day, shamefully, for 2 years. But Sewell Auto Tech is going to teach. They are being smart. Like, okay, we're growing our company. We need mechanics. So how about we train these kids?
Oh, that's genius.
Open this area. And it's a partnership with OC. And then
Wow.
they're getting those certifications, whether it's diesel mechanic, auto mechanic. And guess what? Then they can go work at one of the biggest dealerships around or any of the other ones
Wow.
here or the oil and gas companies. So all of this is happening. I think one of the things is there was just such a lag for so long. So we have gaps, right? We just have to keep
Yes.
going and like watch and celebrate the wins of where we see that progress.
Wow.
There was, it was probably around COVID times. I can't remember. I remember seeing some really bad, kind of bad press for the hospital that, well, they're hiring 18-year-olds to draw blood. I'm like, but what you don't know is those 18-year-olds have been sitting at the ATC with Midland College and MISD learning how to do that. Like,
Yep.
don't come down on
No.
us for us executing and using a workforce and growing a workforce when you don't know what's going on and all you look at is a headline.
Not to sound like a coach, but if you don't, I am what I am, but if you don't have skin in the game, don't complain.
Yeah.
So if you're not willing to go to practice, if you're not willing to, for instance, donate to an organization that you see can actually solve a problem within our community,
Right.
sure, you can talk on the internet, but that doesn't necessarily mean that anyone's going to respect your opinion,
Yeah.
right?
But then you just have to also have the common sense as everybody else to not engage with that person.
Girl, I know.
Like, it's-
Critical thinking is not something
like-
that everyone's born with, I guess, but not sure. But
You're not going to change anybody's mind. You're just going to
No.
engage in a keyboard warrior. And
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh, I know.
I don't have time for that.
The internet just blows my mind. On that note, I would be remiss if I didn't address what people say on the internet about our community.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, let's go.
Okay.
Here I
So
am.
like you and me, I think it's hilarious that two people that are not from Midland are probably one of the biggest advocates for Midland,
Right.
amongst other people. There's
Right,
a lot
absolutely.
of us. But I want to know, there's just, everyone always talks about, at least the negative guys. There's very much a trend where you can go on any social media post that posts about Midland. Like there are some people that will not even put anything related to an oil and gas motif on a design for a t-shirt because they're worried about the criticism. Oh, Midland, it's all people just come in, they make money, and then they leave. Well, I think that there's a part of that is true. But one of the things that I've noticed, because over the last 2 weeks I've been doing research and like kind of looking at the trolls on the internet and also like clicking on their profiles, and I'm sure the older generation listening to this is like, what are you talking about? But if you look at the people that are actually complaining, it's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So what I was able to gather, a couple things that I read on the internet, was Midland is a place where you can do drugs, get high, and I would not put my child anywhere near it. That was one from...
Can I comment?
Go ahead.
Everywhere else is too.
I know. I'm from a big city.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up the first 8 years of my life in Houston.
And I say this too because I worked with kids.
Yes.
Like, this is not me, parent of one on the way. Like, I've worked with children.
Yes.
Guess what?
It happens everywhere.
It is going on everywhere. And it happens here in the public schools and the private schools. I mean, I don't know much about homeschool, but I mean, like, there's access. But here's the deal. Kids are doing that because they have access to phones and apps where this is happening. And so there's not somebody there to guide them and give them restrictions, probably because as a parent,
yes.
my kid asked to always use, Mom, can I watch your phone while we're at dinner? I mean, so you got to have those boundaries. Sorry, but yes.
No, but on that note.
Tell me something, like to that person, what I would say is, please tell me how that is only unique to the Permian Basin.
I agree.
Yeah.
But what's also really interesting too, just like going off of your point, is talking about the importance of a third space, right? I'm very fascinated about this concept that, I don't know, I was reading something of that Harvard has this child wellness institute, and it's also kind of parlaying from what the UK is doing, which is called early interventions within their NHS program. But basically what it is they're trying to understand what creates the best mental health outcomes for children 0 to 5. And what they're saying is that 0 to 5 are the most important times in a child's life. Okay?
Absolutely.
So, yes, that's true. When are parents struggling the most financially within their marriage, within their relationships?
When kids are 0 to 5.
100%.
Right.
So the idea of a third space is essential to not only preventing more drugs and alcohol happening to our young children, but also mentorship, right? So having the idea of a third space can provide resources and, well, really the space to have somebody else other than mom and dad, aunts and uncles.
And that's why we exist.
Crazy how I landed the plane with that, right? I know, crazy. But another thing that I also saw on the internet was I don't even allow my family, that's a whole other word choice, I don't allow my family to live here because I don't think that there's enough out here for children. Another thing, where's a lake? We're building a lake, by the way. That's a whole other story. With by the zoo.
Oh yeah.
There's people want fishing ponds.
Yeah,
fair
body
enough.
of water.
I
Yeah,
enjoy
it's been
fishing
there.
as well. A lot of people are asking, well, what is there to do other than drinking in Midland? And we were having this discussion. I know we've been friends for 7 years now.
Yeah.
But at what point? At what point are you going to go on Google and like actually look for things to do?
Right.
Because I genuinely have been impressed, and I don't like to talk politics or anything or like endorse anybody, and that's not the place for this. But I do have to give credit where credit is due. I do think Lori Blong and her team at the City of Midland
Absolutely.
has done an incredible job communicating about what's been happening.
Absolutely.
And my friend Ryan, who's our producer, he works with the Tall City Blues Fest, and they have been everyone since Mrs. Blong, Mayor Blong, has gotten into her role. And Morales did this too. He was great. But they've really been pushing hard for communication about what is happening. I know Patrick Payton talked about this as well. We have to tell people what's going on in our community in order for people to actually understand that there's more than just young people in the oil and gas industry.
Yeah. It's
making a lot of money and going to drink.
You have to, like, the solution seekers and the positive people have to tell the story, or somebody like the ones you're reading are going to try to tell it for you, but they're not your stakeholders.
No, and they're always going to be there, right? Like, you can always create something really lovely, and somebody's always going to criticize it, okay? I'm guarantee that there's going to be people like doing that on this thing, our podcast. But I think there's something to be said about people that are taking a concerted effort to say, hey, listen, I know that you have preconceived notions about our community. Hey, listen, I know that some of this is true. Like, there are a lot of young people making money on oil rigs. I used to pull airlines on oil rigs, and I get it. It's hard work.
Right.
But there's more.
So I think where that kind of, the things I say to those pieces is, I still say it to people that are new here. Like, it's either a drought or a flood here when it comes to activities to do. So always say yes until you have the opportunity to say no. But that I will also say that I feel like now, and it could be the season of life I'm in where, you know, young kids, but I often find myself having FOMO because I can't go to all the things.
Heard that.
But I like those things. But I have seen a huge stretch of diversity as far as different things that are offered in different spaces for different people. But again, it goes back to those people and I think we see more businesses engaging on different platforms to show what they're doing. We have different groups, whether it's, you know, the Best of Midland or Midland AF or maybe a Midland Odessa, like lots of those type of platforms that are pushing things out. But again, you have to have, as a consumer, you have to pick and kind of curate what you're looking at.
100%.
But it is there. There is something to do all the time. And I will say, like, October is one of my least favorite months, and here's why. There is a trunk or treat or fall festival all the time.
Red Ribbon Week. I can never say that like 5 times.
But outside of the school setting, there is something to do. And as a nonprofit person, we're invited to all these things. And I'm like, guys, that candy's going to blow my budget. But so where I will also say, and I visited with some people with the city here in Midland, and I've had conversations in Odessa the same way, is like there's some stuff we're doing a lot of things, and I think we're getting into almost a piece of saturation in that. Like, where can we be smarter to create, instead of lots of little events, like a large event? So like Chalk the Block is coming up over here at Centennial Park. I think it's going to be amazing. But like, what if in coming years that became the fall festival for Midland? And then same thing with Mural Fest in Odessa. Like, what if that became the, you know, to where we're not relying on people creating events to get exposure and to serve. I mean, a lot of these events, they're for service, right, to the community. But like, what would that look like if we started truly working in collaboration to provide massive events to serve the masses, and also take some mental load off of parents feeling, so I'm not being the one like, no, we can't go to that trunk or treat. No, we can't. I mean, and that's something that we see in the nonprofit space too, is that there are so many great nonprofits out here, and there's so many events to support them. And my biggest thing on that is like, find where you can serve, whether that's with your wallet or your time or just even verbal support, and do that well, right? But you know, in order to exist, it relies on the community being involved with us, and you know, grants and funding and all of that. But it's time and events, but to say that there's nothing for families, man, that's a hard stretch, because
I agree.
It has really, really changed. Now, what I think we're also in is we've seen a population boom. You can see that just walking. I mean, not walking, driving down our streets, right? There's so much traffic. And I've really noticed it like last month. I'm like, good gosh. But
a lot of people.
In that is, with that boom, we've got to have catch-up time, right? We're not structured. There is not enough swim lessons.
No.
I mean, I know this as a parent, available, especially year-round for kids. For us, like sports leagues, fill up. So all of these things are here, but you almost have to be on the ball to get engaged with that.
And I'm guilty of that too myself. So like, I own a swim school, right? It's so difficult because of this argument, right? I've been hee-hawing for 3 years to build this new indoor pool that I'm about to build off West Illinois, because of that exact sentiment of, well, there's just not enough here. Like, I'm taking a huge financial risk to build this. And I'm also a big believer. I'm very much like an internal optimist. I feel like I am a little bit like pragmatic, but more so an optimist that if you build it, they will come, right? And I think what has really changed, I've been here for 8 years now. Well, 9 years, I think. It's like time warp, you know what I mean, girl? Man. I have no idea. See, hey,
but have you changed?
That was good.
But what I won't do,
She
I'm
just
not
plugged
changing.
our motto for the podcast,
I didn't know that.
Growing Roots
I didn't
in
know that.
Midland.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm just not changing my phone number. Like, because
Same.
I'm like, if I change my phone number,
Yes.
like, love the 432 area.
Yes.
Not changing my phone number because then I'm like, never gonna, like, it's
You're
just,
never going to leave.
Nah.
I know. You just get sucked in.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said about, I think it's our generation, because I have never been, and I can say this because I feel like I'm in the game myself. Like, I'm boots to the ground as a business owner that's actively investing into the community. And like, this podcast is not about my work, but it's to highlight what other people are doing.
Right.
Because I know as a parent, because I'm attending all these things, my son did basketball at the Boys and Girls Club. I was blown away at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, how many dads were there? Not only with coffee for like themselves, but coffee for the entire team. Like, it became a social event. And I
Right.
was so surprised because I grew up in a big city, and I tell people this all the time. Like, the first 8 years of my life was in Houston. The last, from 8 to 18, I grew up in Austin. And yes, you can roast me for that. Whatever you think that is, whatever, okay?
Back in the good old days.
Back when, like, South by Southwest was amazing. I saw Amy Winehouse at Stubbs. It was great.
Yeah.
Anyway, so back in the day. And then I went to school in Dallas, okay? Midland is my favorite place, and I say this with my whole chest. Midland is my favorite place I've ever lived because of the people.
Yeah.
You can have the most loving relationships, and I'm very much a hermit. Like, you know me, like, I'll text you and like that's about as much as socialization as I'll get because I'm working all the time. But the people here are incredible.
Absolutely.
And there's something to be said about when people show up for you. Mm-hmm. And I've lived in big cities in Texas. I've lived in 3 major ones. I have never felt more isolated and lonely than I have when I lived in Houston, Austin, and Dallas.
Right. Yeah, it's a big, small town.
I don't feel that here.
No, yeah, we're a big, small town, but I also think that there's like mindsets like during the school bond, I'm like, we've got to start acting like a city,
Yes.
making city decisions. So it's like a very
It's
weird.
not bingo night where everyone's
you know,
like,
it's
hey.
a very weird deal, but yeah, I mean, it is a place where you can connect, and I think that that's for the people who want to be here, choose to be here, have always been here. You know, it is on us to make sure that those doors are open and
Yes.
that our circles are open to people who want to be here and come here and stay here. And I think the more it just takes a few connections, and then people are
does.
in. I mean, I told you, Kyle had the opportunity for us to move last spring, and I dug my heels in, and I'm like, I am not leaving. This is our home. I love my job. I love what I do. This is where I want to raise our family. And if I, going back 10 years, I would have been out. I thought I was going to be in Midland for 3 years, done, move on.
You hear that a lot, right?
Yeah. And
we just moved here for an 18-month, job.
But I didn't come here for oil and gas, and we didn't have to stay here.
Yeah.
But now, like, our choice to stay here is our choice. And there's power in that, but we all have to be, whether or not you're a native Midlander or one that has come to love it, it is on us to make sure that no matter who comes in contact with us has a good experience. It's also on us to make sure that we are raising our own, and it does not matter where that child and that family lives and what zip code they're in. Mm-hmm. We need to be here to support them as a community.
100%. Like, I think, it's at SMU, we had something called total team ownership. Okay. And it's like Extreme Ownership, which is an incredible book, by the way.
Okay.
It's about basically taking extreme ownership over your community.
Yeah.
And to me, what that looks like is talking positively about our community. Mm-hmm. Asking critical thinking questions like what you just said about like the trolls on the internet that are saying, well, there's only drugs and alcohol and the only thing to do in Midland is to drink. Yeah, but aren't you going to do that in Dallas anyway?
Yeah.
Like, if you choose to. You also don't have to choose to drink. I know so many people in Midland who are sober because they're concerned about that.
And there's like a sober society now.
Yes.
And people are putting it out like
100%.
Like this is something that is normal. And
it is because every city has a place for everyone. You just have to look for it. And I think with added communications now, I think we are made more aware of these resources.
Yeah, there's definitely strength in that. And it's also like if there's something that isn't here that you want to be here.
Create it.
Yes, or find somebody that does.
Yes. Or like find a friend and ask them, how do you think we could do this together?
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to end on this last question. I always ask everybody the same question, is what gives you hope for Midland's families and children and families?
I think one piece is I love seeing that so many people are coming here, that younger demographic, and they're choosing to stay here. So then in that is, how are we engaging with them? And I think the hope comes from, it's just finding the good, it's celebrating the good. And you always hear that, always look for the helpers. And they're there.
Mr. Rogers.
Yes. I mean,
girl.
But, one of those, it's celebrating that. And, again, you need to surround yourself with people that are like-minded, and you've got to shout out the good to drown out the bad and be that solution seeker. And if we're able to do that, that's every day what I do in my job as a connector and supporter is I don't let those people that don't have a stake in the game determine how we make our decisions for kids.
Doesn't Brene Brown talk? She always quotes that one quote.
The man in the arena. Oh, I have it framed.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah. If you're not in the arena with me, you can go up to the top or get out of the arena, because we're here to do good. And if that's not the seat for you, you can move on to a different arena. But you don't get a seat at my table for that.
I appreciate that. On that note, how can people find you? How can people figure out which Boys and Girls Club that they can belong to?
So the great thing is Boys and Girls Club of the Permian Basin has 5 sites.
Oh, wow.
And so we have 3 in Odessa and 2 here in Midland.
Nice.
As of last week, we had over 2,060 members, which is 150 more than we did this time last year, and we're not done. And that's just club kids. That's not the over 3,000 kids that are in our sports leagues.
Wow.
So we're everywhere. But you can find us at basinkids.org. And I want to make sure that people understand that we don't turn kids away. We really work to make sure that there is a spot for every kid. We have limited transportation that does go to schools to pick up kids. Obviously, there's only so many seats on the bus, but in that is that we're not turning families away because you make too much money, or we really work with people, and we want to try. One of our big focuses is our teens. We have a teen center at every club, so parents, you don't have to let your teen go home at they're 14, and no, they can come to the club. We do cool things with teens. We're also looking at expansion opportunities inside Midland and Odessa and maybe beyond, but really just making sure that we're a resource for the community. But you can find us all over social media. We're shouting out the good. We don't do anything in isolation. We have so many great community partners and some super fun fundraisers that we do with our clay shoot and our gala every year. But in those pieces is that there's also a place for adults to serve, whether it's coming in and reading to a kid, mentoring a kid, coaching. We can find a spot for you. But my biggest thing is that with Boys and Girls Club, we wouldn't exist if we didn't have those partnerships and people pouring in. So find a place to serve. If you want to be a Boys and Girls Club, we would love to have you. But yeah, that's
I'm going to challenge the internet trolls to sign up to be a mentor instead of just complaining.
Man, you see it all the time. People say if people had to sub the way they have to go to jury duty, people would have a different opinion about education.
That's the truth.
And I'm like, yeah.
Girl, I subbed during my off season, and you learn a lot.
Right. Yeah.
I've loved having you.
Yeah, I've loved it. Thank you for
I'm so thankful that
me.
you came. And if you want to catch her and get to know a little bit more about the Boys and Girls Club of Midland, Odessa, and Permian as a whole, give her a shout. Thanks. Bye.